Hello, welcome back to theCUBE. I'm John Furrier, your host here in our NYSE East Coast access point. This is a super point of presence. All the signal coming out of New York and connecting that to Silicon Valley and Palo Alto, in our Palo Alto studios. Of course, we cover all the events, and we are a great lineup here. It's partner day here at the NYSE. Dan Tapiero is here, co-founder and CEO of One Roundtable Partners and 10T Holdings, got 5 funds. Massive investor all over the crypto, understands the market dynamics, and we're going to get into why that's important as companies are continuing to build and transform how they're financed and how they're going to grow in a new way where, hey, store of value, crypto doing great, blockchain is enabling distributed and decentralized infrastructure. This will build the applications of the future. Sure, AI is going to help along the way, all good. Dan, I'm so psyched to have you on theCUBE here in our New York City office, and great pleasure to meet you. You've done so much great work. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, thank you. Glad to be here, my first time down at the NYSE. It's an awesome site here too, and I think what you're doing is fantastic, bringing the tech world together.
Well, I'm psyched to have you on. I know folks might not know your history. You've got a deeply rooted history in finance. Give a little quick background on what you're doing, and also the funds you got, Roundtable Partners, a little bit different focus than the 10T Holdings. Give a quick summary of your background and your funds, because there's some important conversations to be had about where we are right now.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was over 20 years in the macro hedge fund business and started my career working for Julian Robertson at Tiger, and then worked for Michael Steinhardt, and then I spent 10 years working for Steve Cohen at SAC Capital, and then Stan Druckenmiller at Duquesne. So I had a long career in the money management world. I left that more or less in 2012 and moved into crypto, and then actually more earnestly in 2018, 2019, launching these funds that you've mentioned. And so the first fund I had the idea for in 2019, and I was looking at the overall space. You know, there was sort of I would call it a budding digital asset ecosystem. There was Bitcoin and ETH and a few other of the other cryptocurrencies that were prominent, but I thought to myself, there are many businesses that are going to be building this new ecosystem, and I want to start investing in them. And I think the value, the total value of the space at the time was 300 billion. So we're talking about the value of Bitcoin, the value of Ethereum, all the other cryptocurrencies, and the equity in the space was 300 billion. And I said, you know, I think in the next 10 years, it's a 10-year life fund that I launched, the value could get to 10 trillion. And I said to myself, well, 300 billion to 10 trillion, that's a 30x. No one is going to believe that that was my view. So I put that view into the name of my fund, which is 10T, stands for 10 trillion. So then we raised 3 funds, growth equity. We're the only growth equity fund in the world, more or less, that exclusively invests in digital assets, blockchain, crypto, Web3. And invested in 23 companies, $1.5 billion, I sit on 11 boards. So we're very actively involved in the companies, in the businesses that are in the space. The fourth fund, the 1RT fund, was focused on secondary, special sits, and operating a business, and we're about to launch our 5th fund now, 50T. We've adjusted our view a little bit because
I like the numbers are getting bigger.
I'll tell you why, because the value of the space today is $5 trillion, 5T. So we went from 300 billion in 19 to 5T, and now it's time to readjust our view, and I think 50T in the next 10 years is the goal.
Not as big of a step up from the other one, but still huge numbers, so I love to see that go up. Little side trivia for the SiliconANGLE CUBE fans, our SiliconANGLE.com, my original website when I started the company 15 years ago, the developer would only take Bitcoin. At that time, we had to buy on Silk Road, and it was just historic. Now, of course, we only had the site for like a year. That was the most expensive website, like the value what it could have been now. Good trivia there, but what really happened was just the industry, as it democratized, Dan, you saw the formation of cyclical stuff. You've probably seen that movie before in your days. I mean, hedge fund, you've seen every up and down. Okay, a little bit of a, up to 2018, a little bit of arbitrage, and then you have then a little dip, and then you got the NFTs kick in, so you're starting to see the cultural shift. Okay, then the entrepreneurial muscle gets built. I want you to talk about that because I think you were now, what, 5 years in from what I call true Gen 1 entrepreneurial muscle where companies are being forward entrepreneurship, not the early pioneers who see it early and get in, they're great. Love those guys, but the startups, people say, hey, I'm going to build a business, whether by accident or by design. That's where the growth is, that's where you are now. A lot of DC, a lot of New York City, some Silicon Valley, but certainly around outside the United States, the conversation is, US policy is great right now under Trump, and people are thrilled, in migrations coming in. Now it's like, okay, money making. Where's the liquidity? How do markets form? What is your vision on this? Because I think there's certainly enthusiasm right now, confidence is brewing. What is your vision on where we are now as these companies, you've been investing, they gotta pop, they gotta get up there, they gotta expand.
I think we, of the 23 companies we own, I think at least, I would say 6 to 10 of them in the next 12 to 24 months should be public. We invest only in the, obviously, private companies. We have companies making hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue now. And they've been private for some time, I think are looking to go public. You've heard some of the names, Circle and eToro, they're in our portfolio. Then there are other companies that we own, Kraken and Gemini, which you've also been talked about as potentially going public. And then we have other companies that we think soon will be ready as well. So I think, if you look at the landscape, whether NASDAQ, NYSE, I think, to have only one large public crypto blockchain company, which is Coinbase, makes no sense to me. It's a $70 billion company. They're absolutely fantastic. But the world, and certainly the American investing public, has no idea that there are literally dozens of other companies in the digital asset ecosystem that I think are going to become public soon.
I love the word ecosystem because what you talk about there is a marketplace, right? Ecosystem equals marketplace. Now, you mentioned like Coinbase and some of the things. I got to ask you, what's it like in these board meetings? To give too many dirty secrets, but the true conversations around readiness, fundamentals, as people start to mature, again, this cultural shift is happening. The old way, we know what that looks like, debanking, weird rules. Oh yeah. It's a shit show.
Yeah, that's
okay. I mean, come on, let's just call it a shit show. Okay, I'm being polite.
That was a terrible period. Last 3 years, we were all hiding in a bunker, more or less. I mean, I had companies getting sued left and right for nonsense. It was the most abusive, I think, overreach by a regulator that we've ever seen, certainly in the space. And now all of a sudden, it's changed overnight. This administration, I think, wants to encourage the businesses in the space to be public here in the US. I think, look, there are protocols, there are cryptocurrencies, there are founders who they're trying to encourage to come here and start their, or stay here and launch those are venture projects. My focus is on the more developed companies, the ones that could be public, that are making quite a lot of money, that have a moat around their business, that have a niche.
They're on the doorstep.
And I think, look, sitting in these meetings, I think that, a few of them need to get a little more buttoned up. We're talking about crypto guys. A lot of them are younger guys. And I think they need, a few white hairs in the room.
Exactly.
But I think they're getting there. I mean, I'm not quite the young, but we have some white hairs in the room.
Well, I mean, scar tissue and experience.
Yes,
but the I'm getting more into the orientation of just mindset. Because,
well, this has been the biggest 180-degree change in our space that's existed. I mean, going back 15 years, everyone was under attack and debanking, as you mentioned, and then you woke up, and then on January 21st or whatever, the world was open for business.
What are some of the dynamics that the NYSE and these exchanges should look at? Obviously, again, you have a portfolio of later stage, I call them on the doorstep, knocking on the door. They got to get ready, whatever. They're gonna line up or not. They choose, but then you got the other fund. Roundtable does more early deals.
No, Roundtable Partners, we bought in the secondary, so we're buying we weren't leading deals. We were buying stock in the secondary at massive discounts during the 23 and 24 bear market.
So those are more turnarounds.
Well, that was stock in companies that we own and other ones as well, but we were buying them at big discounts. It was more of a value
so you get
type
position.
play. Correct.
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 So they're in the stable.
Correct.
They're behind the other guys. Okay, so but you have a good pipeline.
Correct.
But going to one place.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Liquidity.
Absolutely.
and public trading.
Yeah.
What needs to happen? What's the current state of the art? Where's your head at on what we have in place and what needs to change?
Yeah, I think what needed to change has changed. I think that instead of having a hostile environment, we now have an environment where the companies are going to be encouraged. So I already know conversations between NYSE and some of my companies, NASDAQ, has already been happening. Look, very big picture, I think all value eventually goes on chain. Okay, but that world is not here today.
Yeah.
That world could be 10 years away. Yeah. I don't know, you have real world asset tokenization. Yeah. Larry Fink talks about that. I think that's a slower process. Today, what the administration can do to make the US a global hub for crypto, blockchain, Web3, digital assets, it's to get these companies public and getting public, they got to get a little more buttoned up. They've got to, maybe every once in a while put on a tie. I don't know.
No.
They've got to get no tie. Okay, but we got to get
jacket's fine.
We got to get the right accountants in there. We got to get the audits cleaned up properly. And the boards have to look like the way the boards are supposed to look. Proper audit committees, et cetera.
It's super exciting. I mean, I think I put my little old school IT hat on and think like a geek and be like, okay, are they instrumented? I mean, the accounting stuff, okay, whatever. But like, IT stuff on chain. You talk about on chain. Oh, you're talking about immutable and also measurable, direct measurable. Of course, it's chain, so it's good. What's the instrumentation? What's the IoT look like? It's like, so you have a lot of technology potential. I haven't been tracking on this for a few years, but is there like the kind of chain analysis type view where I can look at the data, understand like the trading? Because I would imagine that
absolutely
these guys,
there are many data companies that give you insight into what is the data on the blockchains happening live. We have companies that are very focused on data like Blockworks, and we have companies like QuickNode that actually run all of the many of the largest chains. You have companies that are now like Kraken just releasing their own L2. I mean, you've got Base, Coinbase's Base, which has been a gateway to DeFi. But I think the public can't immediately digest all of that. It's very complex. But these companies are the gateways to that world. And they're building that world.
And they're performing.
And they're making huge dollars, yes.
Okay, this is awesome. So I want to shift gears just for a little bit, because I want to get into something a little bit more macro.
Yeah.
I've been saying this on theCUBE, like, I don't think people kind of truly understood what I was saying, but I was talking to someone my age, kind of old school market, and I said, we're going to see, now you just go back 15 years when we started, my whole website example. I know crypto billionaires who are nouveau, young, and I won't say lucky, they're there.
No,
and now you're gonna see an in-migration of funds, of new investor class, of young and Bitcoin-related crypto investors. And they're going to want to put money to work.
100%.
Real estate, other vehicles, asset classes, maybe even venture. So you have all their money's in Bitcoin. Great store of value, no debate there. I'm on that camp. But now I'm like, hey, I got a couple $1 billion. I got to put it to work, buy some real estate. This is a new dynamic.
Yeah.
What's your view on that impact? Am I overstating this? Am I overthinking this? Because that's going to be, the dollars involved are significant.
Yeah.
So is that going to be an impact?
I think it's just starting. I think that, you hear about all the success stories. You tend not to hear about the failures.
Yeah.
There are tons of failures all over the place, and many of these chains that people make a fortune on end up going to zero.
Yeah.
You see some of the volatility. There is a venture, a super early stage venture part of that world.
Yeah.
We don't deal with that, right? We're focused on companies that are doing real things. We can buy at proper valuations that we believe have exits either through M&A or or IPOs. And I think the builders of those companies are accruing lots of wealth, and of course you're not going to have all of your wealth in one asset. As you mentioned, the Bitcoin billionaires, there are quite a few guys walking around. They're mostly going to keep 80-90% in Bitcoin. But the reality is that this process has been ongoing. This shift in, what you're really talking about is demographics to a younger person who has access to significant wealth. I think it's just been ongoing, but it's happening much more slowly. than you might think.
Because the environment's been hostile. I mean, I look at this dam,
Correct.
a dam of water that
Correct.
just opens up, and now the existing pool of money, of people, and by the way, culture, legacy, the new flow's coming in.
Correct.
Can you scope that for me? Because like, what's the magnitude of the scope? Not dollars, but like impact. Because now you're going to have more
dollars
more propensity,
Yeah.
integration, more serendipity, more investment style changes, maybe more vehicles.
I think the biggest change is the traditional world and the big institutional money realizing that this is an asset class, this whole area.
Yep.
The digital asset economy, the digital asset ecosystem, that's an asset class. That's the big flow. 99% of the world essentially has zero exposure in the dollar amount. The space is only $5 trillion in size. It's not that big. There are over $800 trillion in total value of total assets out there. So I think it's still early.
All right, now coming back to something you said earlier, M&A, IPO, we talked the IPO landscape, great commentary on that.
Yeah.
We should do a deeper dive on that, maybe do a whole segment on IPO readiness and all the dynamics. You mentioned M&A.
Yeah.
Talk about that dynamic, because...
Well, actually, I can't, because I mean, the one thing that we've been really focused on is live right now. And
okay, so you got some things in the
yeah,
work. Okay,
I can't talk about it, but let me tell you,
regulatory
you'll
policy
hear about
changes, though, just more macro.
Yes.
Are we in a better regulatory policy environment for M&A?
I think for our companies, yes. I think that once you know, the blockchain crypto companies, once you're not being attacked, you know, you have all sorts of mind share that opens up, and I think that's what's going on now. Also, I just want to, the last 4 or 5 months have probably been the single best for my space. Q4 and Q1, in terms of revenue of my companies, is back to or above the 2021 peaks. So things are really starting to rip. Not for all the companies, the NFT, metaverse companies still a little lagging behind, but broadly speaking, and that's why it's a great time also.
No, it's a great time. And I'm so happy for this, because I agree with you. It's been this like bunkered in environment. So exciting, and we're back to kind of enthusiasm and getting more and more confidence. Yeah. It's funny, in Silicon Valley, the crypto folks from Ethereum and others are coming to Silicon Valley for the first time in 3 years. They're like, stay away from the US.
True.
The piece about M&A, I know you can't talk about it, but now the government and the enthusiasm is high. If I'm Donald Trump sitting here, and you're there, okay, and I got my Secretary of Treasury there, and all my advisors, Elon, well, he's actually into it. Tell me what to do if I'm looking for advice.
Right.
Do I continue? What would you say to me if I was Donald Trump right now, if he was here? What would you?
I think you've got to incentivize there are two things. I think you have to incentivize companies, and maybe also the exchange or some. I don't know how it would work, to bring some of these companies public, to help them along. I don't know how you do that from the government perspective. Maybe, you know, maybe it's maybe it's, you know, a nod to some of the investment banks here to get going. But look, I think
the banking's the key, right? I mean,
right to get some of the banks. I mean, it was only recently that some of these banks are even allowed to custody a Bitcoin. I think that. If things open up on the banking and brokerage front, I think, and there's an idea that, look, hey, we need 20, 30, 40, 50 companies that are in the digital asset space. We need these public, we need to have an index. We need to have an ability for people to invest and invest capital and participate. Correct.
A real market.
And a real market, because it's not a real market right now. There are very few players, and these companies are really churning out quite a lot of money. So I think that would be helpful. The other thing I would say is, the Treasury, I think, should be very focused on the stablecoin market. I think the dollar stablecoin market could be of tremendous use to Treasury, not only in terms of managing and controlling issuance, but I think also in terms of promoting the dollar as the world's digital currency, so that we don't have to deal with the nefarious actors out there. You know who they are.
Yeah, exactly.
China, Russia, those guys who are, you know, always a thorn, always wanting to go the wrong way. I think, you know, we're at a stage now where we're ahead. You know, we were kind of falling a little bit behind or neutral with the previous administration. Now we can charge ahead and completely dominate this whole space.
And the impact, and just to kind of connect the dots, the trajectory, if that continues on that path, is better world position, better flow, financial stability, robustness.
Correct.
I mean, how would you compare this to some previous things have you seen in your career? Is there any comparable?
This is the biggest thing that I've ever seen, the biggest change. I always think of this, the internet was the digitization of ideas and information. This whole world is the digitization of value and money. So there's nothing that's worth more than what's happening today. There's never been as big a structural macro change. And you know, I think
it's an opportunity
for us to take the lead. It kind of reminds, this is an early stage market, kind of reminds me of, you might remember back, sort of like, imagine being in the mortgage-backed security market in 1981. There was no market, or 82 or 83, and then Salomon Brothers created it. Well, it's sort of, we're at that earliest stage in this market. I think, as I said before, everything eventually will be on chain, but you know, stable coins, if I were the Treasury Secretary of Trump, as you mentioned here, would be the major area, but also, look at this, only 4 years ago, there was just zero stable coins settled, zero. Last year it was over $10 trillion. So just think about the kind of growth that is. And that happened during a period when the administration was hostile to the space, 0 to 10 trillion. So what do you think can happen when we have actually proper backing by intelligent people who, you know, have a view as to where we're going?
Yeah, and I think there's kind of a mission behind this too, so everyone gets worried about getting over their skis. I mean, the work you've done, certainly from deploying and investing and doing what you do, has been great. But there's also a mission community behind this, not just just hit the trough and drink from it. It's like, hey, we're going to do that too. We're going to make money. But it's just, there's a bigger picture.
I feel part of that. I feel part of this is a way to increase generalized adoption. And I've been saying since 2019 that this was an opportunity for the U.S. to take the lead. And finally, it's permeated to the right places, and we have the right guys in control. And I think they can steer the ship in the right way. No one wants more regulation, more control, none of that. I mean, but we need guys who are leaders who can steer the ship in the right way.
I was born in the 60s, so I can say this.
Me too. How old do you think I was? Me too.
I can say this. So when I was growing up, it's like, oh yeah, the hippies were not the 50s. And there was that back, my parents, they were the madman generation, but they were different. That was kind of the hippie revolution. We are going through a digital cultural revolution.
Right now, I agree, 100%.
And I think your scope and mindset of this 10T, 50T, I think is like light. I think it could be 100T, and I think.
Okay, well, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. I agree. I think it could be.
Well, if you look at how AI can cross-pollinate it to decentralized applications, forget about all the digital assets. That's just one category. So I think if you look at the portfolio, forget the store of value, the enablement that could come from this is significant. I think there's I mean, my eyes are bigger than my stomach right now, but in terms of viewing it, I just think once the shift has happened, and it has happened, and I think the Trump election, the mandate, forget not just him as a person, but like the unanimous vote, whether it was a standing ovation.
It was huge.
It was so obvious to anyone under the age of 30 that if you're not doing this, I really don't want to live here. Like, I mean, that's the kind of, like, that is, to me, the most important thing I saw. That was like, hey, all that other stuff, this is like real. I'm a digital native, soon to be AI native, soon to be, decentralized native. That's your world. Well, thanks so much for coming in and sharing.
This has been great.
It's been great.
Love that.
Great commentary. Last minute we have left in. Put a plug in for what you're working on, people watching. What are you excited about? What are you working on?
Oh, well, we're just launching.
Pro tips on banking experience. What do you want to share?
We're launching our 5th fund now, 50T that you mentioned. And for the first time, we're going to make a little foray into growth stage tokens, which basically didn't even exist 3-4 years ago. Most of the portfolio will be equity, again, in these growth stage companies. But for the first time now, there are actually growth stage tokens, so protocols that are producing real revenue that aren't like this pump and dump meme stuff. I think that our space, our challenge is to look towards and focus on the legitimate area. You know, there are a lot of younger people having a lot of fun, pumping stuff up and down. But I don't see that as having lasting value.
Sounds like volatility like here.
Yeah, well, I think way more than here. Way more than here. You don't have things going down 99% in a week.
As Andy Grove said, let chaos reign and reign in the chaos.
There you go.
I mean,
that's a great note to end on.
Okay.
That's a great note to
Thank you
end
for
on.
coming on.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. We are here in New York City, extracting the sea from the noise. Of course, bringing you all the coverage here in Wall Street, here in our New York Stock Exchange East Coast access point, super point of presence. Thanks for watching.